And this brings us really to the first non-quarterback discussion point of our show tonight here on the USC channel at the Voice of College Football. You mentioned Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane. Like, guys, I'm talking to you. Not Crash. I'm talking to you, Jacoby and Makai. It's time for you to step up. All right. It's time to get the real Makai Lemon. It's time to get big league Jacoby Lane. Like, they haven't been good. They were not good against Notre Dame. They were not good against Nebraska. It is time for the receivers to step up and help out your quarterback. And so, like, Mayava did regress against Nebraska. No question about it. I'm not pivoting on that. I'm not changing my mind on that. But yeah, he didn't get help. Like, Ethan really, in his articles at Trojans Wire, really emphasized that particular point, and he's correct. Like, it's time for the receivers to be the big dogs. It's time for these guys to play the way they're capable of. And so against Northwestern, which is a good but not athletically overwhelming defense, like, this is a time to make a statement. This is a time to bounce back from that Nebraska game, and it's time to act like big dogs. Makai Lemon, at the end of September, I was thinking, like, hey, this guy could really win the Biletnikoff award as the best receiver in the country. Right now, I kind of think that's really out of the picture. Like, I don't think he's a serious candidate at the very top. Like, you probably think that you'd have to think that Jeremiah Smith of Ohio State, or another really another receiver who isn't struggling back-to-back games the way Makai Lemon did. That the Biletnikoff seems like a pipe dream at this point. But, like, if he wants to make a run at it, it has to start against Northwestern, putting up some big, snappy numbers and making this passing game rock and roll again. So, Crash, in terms of, like, the larger workings of the USC offense, do you think it starts with the receivers against Northwestern? Like, it's less about what Mayava does, it's more about what the receivers do, or do you think it's a little bit more integrated in that? And that, maybe that establishing the run game with King Miller first, you kind of take the pressure off Mayava, and you establish the idea that, what, Jaden, you don't have to be the superhero in this game. Let your offensive line, let your running game set the table, and then when Northwestern crowds the tackle box, then you're going to have open receivers, and the game's just going to all kind of snap into place. Who do you see as kind of bearing the responsibility on Friday against Northwestern to kind of set the tone? Is this a game in which Mayava sets the tone, or is it more about the receivers? Is it more about the running game and King Miller? Which way do you think you'd go on that one?
So obviously there's certainly an argument for each one, but I kind of think I definitely want to see the run game be aggressive and, have King Miller get his reps for sure. There also is something about this game that we talked about where it's a good game because the competition should be, or just the level of competition shouldn't be as intense as it's been pretty much the last month and a half, pretty much from like the Illinois game till now. The competition hasn't been as intense. So for that reason, I think it's a good opportunity for everyone who's been struggling. Mayava, obviously everyone's numbers have gone down in part because of the tougher competition, but I think this is a game where maybe some confidence is feeling a little shattered after just everything that's happened the last 4 games. So I think this is a good game for everyone to really kind of maybe get their mojos back, build up their confidence again. Obviously, Lemon and Lane are part of that. I think King Miller's proven very fearless in every game, but Jaden Mayava too. So I think there's honestly an argument for each one. I think the receivers definitely need to be better, but then also I think Mayava does need to, step up his game for sure. And then obviously maybe you do, though, start with the run game and just, get them, just, beat them that way and just trust your O-line to do their job. Obviously, there is questions about, will Killian O'Connor be back? Alani Noah went down last game. So, but one thing that has impressed me about this O-line is that no matter who's in there, they just manage to still, keep themselves, they managed to still play pretty well, which has been really impressive considering that O-line is typically one of the positions that takes the longest for those guys to gel and really play solid together.
More comments. Jeff Rodriguez talking about how intimidating this game was in Nebraska, and like USC was on the back foot, to use either a soccer or tennis term, like British sportscasters often use that turn of phrase. And, USC was able to turn the game around in the second half. But as we talked about on Sunday, the Dylan Raiola injury was a factor in that. Like it was hard for USC to get acclimated to that environment in Nebraska. And of course, Northwestern, also Iowa, played in the Coliseum. And Jeff is pounding home the very accurate point that they had just have that comfort zone at the Coliseum. So like just having a mom's chicken noodle soup, just could be the simplest cure for what's been ailing the USC offense. And then, I'm going to highlight everything Gary from Dana Point said. So Gary says, USC seems like they've taken a step forward in the last 8 games, but I think they have to take 3 steps forward to win the last 4. What do you guys think? Well, Gary, I would say this before I hand it over to Crash. Nebraska, I look at Nebraska as not necessarily a step forward, but avoiding a step back. That's how I'd say. Like USC did not lose ground. It didn't lose the game, but like it wasn't this dynamic, evolving, forward-moving kind of performance. It was shaky, but USC was able to get through it. And that Dylan Raiola injury, in my mind, it played a role. It wasn't the sole determining factor, but like it was part of the context. Sometimes your opponent doesn't play well and you're able to get away with it. And that's what I felt about the USC Nebraska game. USC not playing a good game, but Nebraska was just a little bit worse in the most important moments. Now Northwestern, like this should be a game that's not terrifically complicated. Now, of course, that doesn't guarantee it won't be complicated, but like USC should be able to get through this game without too much drama. And then we're going to learn a lot more about this team against Iowa, and then of course the big one, Oregon, in a couple of weeks. And Gary, we haven't talked too much in recent months. I haven't talked to you since last year with Tim, but in terms of that Oregon game, hopefully what Nebraska achieves for USC is just by surviving that intimidating environment that Jeff Rodriguez was talking about. Maybe that kind of flips the switch with this team. Maybe just the act of surviving. It was ugly, we know that. But when you survive that kind of raucous road game, nighttime environment, maybe that fills a locker room with a new kind of belief, a new kind of toughness that filters through everybody. And everyone, your shoulders get higher and your chest puffs out a little bit and you think, hey, I'm actually stronger than I thought. Gary, maybe that's the dynamic which USC gains from that Nebraska win. And this team finds that extra level of toughness. When we talk about the 2022 USC team that did so well and turned in a great season, almost made the playoff, you had real warriors on that team. You had Andrew Voorhees. You had Brett Nealon, that Nealon nudge at Oregon State, one of the great plays in USC history, embodying the fight on spirit. Justin Dedich, and all the other guys on the offensive line. Haskins as well, the transfer from Virginia. And Travis Dye was a great leader, and unfortunately, of course, he got injured in that Colorado game in November of that year. But, Jordan Addison, he was a dude. I mean, you had so many guys step up and be leaders. And like I would say, Gary, like we're waiting for this team to acquire that kind of dynamic, that kind of mindset where like just everyone's standing tall as a leader, not by words so much as by example. Like just imagine Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane looking at their subpar performances the past few weeks and growing and learning from those difficult outings. And this offensive line, which has dealt with so many injuries, like to me, that's been the most impressive unit on this team, finding ways to get it done each week instead of getting snowed in, which, happened to a degree with last year's offensive line. And certainly it happened with the offensive line in South Bend against Notre Dame 2 years ago, when Caleb Williams didn't have a chance. Maybe that Nebraska game just fills this team with a new belief that builds and grows and increases. And then so by the time you get to Oregon and Autzen Stadium on November 22nd, this USC team is ready to do what it did in 2011 under Lane Kiffin. Go to Autzen and win when not many people were expecting USC to get the job done. So that's kind of my view on your point, Gary. Crash, your general view of can this team take those forward steps needed to get where it really needs to go?
I think I agree with you, Matt, that you said that Nebraska, it's not a step back. So, but I think obviously there's a lot that you said there that I really want to, that I really agree with. That obviously I think just by surviving a game and you're thinking, wait, like I'm stronger than I thought. Like it's more just that mental toughness too, that I think that the fact that USC could have just said like, all right, physically I'm exhausted. I think I've done enough. But mentally, you just have to stay mentally strong in those moments. And I think that's what that game was. It was really just gritty. And I mean, it wasn't pretty, but I liked while it was certainly an ugly game, like I said on Sunday, what I did like was that they found a way to win. And it doesn't always, and I mean, it got the job done. I'm not saying I want to see that every week, but it got the job done. It's like when you go to a workout and you're just about halfway through, your body's exhausted, and you're just like, I'm done. But your mind's like, you're not done. Like your mental toughness keeps you going. I think that's what that game was like. And I think if they can have a couple good games here, build some momentum, and go to Autzen in 3 weeks, that certainly is something. That certainly, I think that mental toughness is there. Because I've said this before about Autzen. I'm not sure if I've said this here, but I've said it a few other times publicly, is Autzen Stadium is the most hostile environment I have ever been in my life. I went 2 years ago with my aunt, who is an Oregon alum. So it's certainly fun, obviously family banter. She probably, kept me, so I didn't get completely, killed or anything, but it was still a fun experience, but it was still just hostile. And because, from what I've been hearing, both from Jeff being there, as well as other fans I know who went to that game that I've been in touch with over the weekend, it's that that whole stadium was really bought into it, especially with the blackout. I mean, that was super evident, especially when after that first Nebraska score, they all released the black balloons, which I thought was kind of looked pretty cool on TV. I will give them that. But I think just by surviving a really hostile environment and a passionate fan base, it gives me confidence that if USC can just keep building and taking the steps needed to keep getting better in the next couple weeks, I think they got a shot against Oregon, especially because Oregon is yet to beat a team that's currently ranked. And I'm not trying to knock against Oregon. They're clearly a good team, but they have the one team that they played that is currently ranked beat them by 10. And people who really watched the game closely said that it wasn't as close as the score says.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana beats Oregon by 10 in Autzen, and that's with Fernando Mendoza throwing a pick six. So, Oregon's offense scored just 13 points, not 20, against the Hoosiers defense. Indiana definitely in control of that game. And you have people in the chat making the point, hey, who's going to win Oregon, Iowa this coming weekend? And that's really interesting because, USC plays on Friday. So then Lincoln Riley and his staff and the USC team, they can all sit back on their couches on Saturday and they can watch that Oregon-Iowa game, the next two opponents. So they get to scout each of their next two opponents on Saturday. Like they get a head start on game preparation as a result of the Friday game against Northwestern. Like they can watch that Oregon-Iowa game live, and then that Lincoln Riley and staff are going to cut up the film on Sunday and the following Monday. And so the game prep for Iowa can really lead USC into the preparation for the game against Oregon. It's kind of funny how it works out that way, but it could be advantageous to USC in a very real